All right, we are now going to do tape number 6, and we're going to leave campaigning behind, and we're going to focus now on governing. Okay? You run for election, and once you win, you go, now I have to govern. What do I have to do? How do I do it? That's what we want to talk a little bit about now. So, what we're going to talk about is money, specifically the federal government and money. Couple of words you need to know. Actually, there's several. One is fiscal year. Okay? Fiscal year, also abbreviated as FY. Let's get that right. There we go. Now, what is a fiscal year? A fiscal year is simply a year that the government uses for its budget. Okay? And the fiscal year for the federal government starts October 1st and it ends September 30th. You know, they could have started July 15th and finished July 14th the following year if they wanted to. They just chose at some point in the past to have a fiscal year that starts October 1st and ends September 30th. Okay? So, the first thing to know when you think about it is that in a couple of weeks, we're going to be at the end of the fiscal year. Okay? We're going to be at the end of the fiscal year. And the new fiscal year, you need to have a budget. And that's one of the words I need you to know. The budget. The budget is the amount. Budget is the amount of money that the federal government is going to spend in that fiscal year. So we are coming up at the time of this taping of this video on the fiscal year 2021. It's going to start in October 2020 and it's going to last through the end of September 2021. So it's the fiscal year 2021 and there's the budget. And what is the budget for the next year? I don't know because as of this taping, Congress hasn't approved it. So I can't answer that for you. What I can do is tell you what the current budget is. And the current budget, let's get this right, is $4,700,000,000,000. $4,700,000,000,000. That's million, thousands, hundreds. $4,700,000,000,000. Biggest budget in American history, the biggest budget by far of any country in the world. That's our budget. Okay? So, that's how much we're going to spend. All right? Now, the government wants to spend money. How is it going to do that? Well, it has to get the money from someplace, and the government takes the money from taxes. Okay? So the government collects taxes from all of us who work. And if you go to a national park, there's fees. If you're trying to trade with other countries, there's fees. They're called tariffs that are assessed on you. So basically, taxes and fees are where the federal government gets its money. How much did the federal government get this year? Well, it got, are you ready for this? $3,700,000,000. I'm sorry, $3,700,000,000,000. Okay, so you go, wait a second, we're spending more than we're taking in. You're absolutely correct. What is that then? That difference is called the deficit. The second word I need you to know. The deficit is $1 trillion. So the government is spending $4.7 trillion It's collected $3.7 trillion. It's going to run a deficit of $1 trillion. In other words, it's going to spend money it doesn't have. Now, later on in another tape, I'll talk to you about where that money comes from. But right now, what's important to know is that the federal government wants to spend 4.7, only has 3.7 coming in, so it runs a deficit of $1 trillion. Now, next word you need to know. Debt. What is the debt? The debt is adding up all of the deficits that we have had in American history. Okay? And how much is that? Well, it's about 23 trillion 300 billion dollars. So you go back to American history, very beginning, Revolutionary War. France came and helped us. We never repaid France back for that help. We owe them money. Okay? Well, that's part of our debt. Okay? This $1 trillion is part of our debt. Over the course of American history, we have built up a debt of about $23 trillion. That's a lot of money. Now that I've done all this, we have to stop and go, did this pandemic have anything to do with this? This was the budget that was agreed to by the Congress before the pandemic took effect. This budget began October 1st last year. Okay, so everybody agreed this is what we're going to spend. Then lo and behold, the pandemic happened. It only happens once every 100 years here in the United States, I guess. So all of a sudden, because of the pandemic, the Trump administration said that everybody must shut down. All the state governments shut down. The economy went off a cliff. It collapsed, basically. And so the government said, we need to get people back going. So what happened? Well, turns out what they did, and you're going to have to forgive me, I'm going to have to move this up close so you can see it. Actually, I'm not sure you're going to be able to see it. What they did is they created a stimulus plan. They called it CARES. And I forget what CARES stands for, but that's beside the point. Okay? And what they said is, we're going to give money to people. So lo and behold, people just got checks from the government. I got $1,200. My wife got $1,200. We just got checks from the government so that we could spend it. Okay? Because they needed people to keep spending, even if you're out of work. Those $1,200 went to most Americans who had filed an income tax in the last 2 years. My mother, who died in January, she got a check too. Okay, because she had filed an income tax the year before. Who knew? Okay, then the government also gave what's called PPPs, money to businesses, so that they could keep some of their employees around. Hundreds of billions of dollars went out for that. In addition to that, there was also extra money given to people who were unemployed. They lost their job because of the pandemic. The federal government stepped in and gave them an extra $600 a month. Okay? So all of this money was given to people. Okay? It's all part of the CARES Act, part of the stimulus plan. And you go, none of it's in the budget. And you're absolutely correct. The total cost of that right now is estimated to be about $3.3 trillion. $3.3 trillion. That's the total cost of that stimulus plan. $3.3 trillion. Now, where did the money come from? We're going to borrow it. Okay? So you look at this $3.3 trillion. Where does it belong? Technically, you should add it to the budget. Then, since there's no taxes paying for it, it gets added to the debt. To the deficit. So instead of a deficit of $1 trillion, once you add this $3.3 trillion, the deficit actually works out to be about $4.3 trillion. Then you add that to the debt, and the debt at the end of the stimulus plan works out to be 0.6. I got to add correctly. $26.6 trillion. So this is what was budgeted, and then the pandemic came along, everything got blown up, and our deficit is now $26.6 trillion. Okay? Now, as I say this at the beginning of September, Congress is debating another stimulus plan. If they do that, that is going to add to the deficit. What they're talking about is the Democrats want an expansive stimulus plan worth a couple of trillion more dollars. The Republicans want a stimulus plan, they're calling it a skinny stimulus plan, which would only cost $1 trillion. So what we know right now is that our stimulus plan has added to the government deficit and the government debt. Okay? There you go. More later.